People want results immediately. Oftentimes, the results don't come immediately. You need development before those results will come. The greatest teacher is failure. You realize that there's more than one way to do it. I think that I've become much more malleable. I see things deeper than just strictly on a surface basis.
What's a conversation to have with yourself at that moment to get you out of that?
Kind of trigger my mental discipline to say, that's over, it's done. Now, what can we take from that, and how do I get my team to move forward from it?
Coach Tim Cohn is the winningest coach in PBA history, with 25 championships and 2 Grand Slams to his name. Born in the U.S. but raised in the Philippines, he's known for his strategic brilliance, leadership, and commitment to building a winning culture both in the PBA and with the national team, Pilas Pilipinas.
From a leadership standpoint, it starts with you. Because if you don't, if you're the one who waddles, then you'll lead them everybody into wallowing as well. You get older and wiser, and I think that's one of the problems we have with our society right now is that we don't learn to fail and get better. I was so ganado. Frustration is our greatest enemy. That at all costs we have to stay away, because frustration discourages us, and when we discourage, we lose our energy and we can no longer perform at the level we want to perform at.
After all the championships, what still keeps you going?
I really don't understand the question. That's what I mean by I don't understand the question. Why would you want to stop? Why would you want to do something?
Coach Tim, thanks for doing this. Before we begin, I know I promised no math, but let's do this. This will be the last on numbers. Wanted to surprise you with this. Did you know that you've coached a total of 96 conferences and have won 25 of those?
I didn't know I had 96, but yeah.
Meaning you've won a championship 26% of the time.
Uh-huh.
So you've won roughly 1 out of every 4 conferences. So when you go in a conference, I have a 25% chance of winning this.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, actually. We oftentimes measure in games won and stuff, but not in terms of conferences or years coached. I guess I've been, 36 years of coaching. So, yeah, about three a year, and that comes out roughly to about 96.
Correct.
Just surprise.
And you've won, again, 26% of that. I know you've inspired not just basketball fans, but leaders in business and life. When did you first realize that your impact went beyond X's and O's and into shaping lives?
Well, I'd like to think I do that, but I think it really comes down to player relationships, and I've always said from a coaching standpoint that I want my players to learn more about life than I do about basketball, and I want people to take life lessons away from playing the game or playing with us as a player. So. That's always been my philosophy, even 35 years ago.
Why is that important to you, that the players take away lessons?
Because I think it's a legacy that you want to give to the players, and you're concerned about them. And I think that deep-seated concern builds a relationship, and if you build a relationship, then people are going to perform better. And sure, there's a little bit of selfishness in it because I want our guys to perform better. But, we don't just talk about basketball. We also talk about basketball related to life and life skills. So, we do a lot of stuff with John Maxwell, Stephen Covey. I have been, through the years, my owner with Alaska back in the day was really intent on me going to leadership seminars. Our whole coaching staff would do that. And it was really a push on him to make me a better leader. And so that's one thing I always look back on my Alaska years, and I really appreciate that part of what went on during those days.
Started quite young there as a coach. How old were you when you
I was 30. 32, I
32,
think.
yeah.
32. I was at the time I started coaching. I had 7 players that were older than me that I was coaching, and I remember that. People won't always remember the names, but Abiki Dobbin, Yoya Biederman,
Sure.
Ricky Velosa, they were all older than me when I came to the team. So it was quite an adjustment for them, and it was quite a challenge for me to coach the older players right from the very start.
How did you gain their
I didn't. Early on, I didn't. And we ended up, it was like trying to teach old dogs new tricks at the time. And I was so young and I was so ganado to coach. I was really hard. I at that stage of my career, I really drove players hard. I conditioned hard. Everything we did was hard. And I had 37, 38-year-old players that really couldn't keep up with the way I wanted to coach at that time. Now I've got 38, 37, I've gotten older and wiser, and I realize how to manage players like that. But back then, I didn't really have that understanding. It was, just one way, my way or the highway. And so basically, within the first couple of years, we made a lot of changes to the team and got a younger group that I was able to grow with as a young coach with younger players.
You talked about you being this driving force in the early years. Did that change eventually?
Yeah, I mean, you get older and wiser. You realize that there's more than one way to do it, and I think that I've become much more malleable as a coach, as a leader, and I see things in a deeper than just strictly on a surface basis. And I think back in the day, 30 years ago, I was really coaching at a surface basis, and just like anything else, I grew as a coach, and it was through the leadership seminars, through the readings of other coaches, through my obsessive stalking of Phil Jackson and Tex Winter. I mean, I know everything about them. Because I've read everything that's ever been written about them, and I studied their game. I studied, the Bulls and the Lakers, and I've evolved as a coach. And I think that, you have to continue to grow.
Up to this day?
Up to this day, for sure. I don't think there's ever a stop of growing. I always tell my players, once you feel like you know it all, then it's time to retire. It's time to retire, because that means you're not open to grow and improve. So I always tell our older players that once you feel that,
that's it.
Time to hang it up. And so they make sure they keep on growing.
And you talked about Phil Jackson, Tex Winter, I guess reading, watching. Did you also reach out to people to talk to them, part of this growth of yours? And who did you reach out to?
Yeah, of course. It's been so many people that have been a big part of my growth. I think Tex Winter was one, only because I run the system that Tex ran.
Triangle offense?
Yeah, the triangle offense. And it's kind of unique in the world right now. Nobody runs the triangle offense except maybe me. And I don't know, maybe a few women's programs.
Sure.
But back in the day, I had to learn the triangle on my own. And I did that through, back in the day, in the old, I don't know if people remember the Far East Network, FEN, we used to get from Clark Air Base.
Yes.
And
so you would watch.
So we would watch, because when I first started coaching, we couldn't get NBA games on local TV.
Absolutely.
It was only through Clark. So we'd have this big
Long antenna. The
big antenna on top of the building, and then we'd bring the wires down.
Same here.
I can remember being up on top of that building and my father sticking his head out the window and saying, "Move it a little bit this way, a little bit that way," because it was too much snow, and finally get it just right. And then from there, we hooked it up to a Betamax, and we would record the games.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, it was mostly Chicago Bulls games.
Yeah.
And when I watched Chicago, it was just like an epiphany, coming in my brain saying, this is what I wanted to do. The trouble is I didn't know what it was, but they were doing something that just felt right, that looked right. And I felt that I wanted to pursue that and understand it more. So we started videotaping the games, and then I would break them down. And I would break them down, I'd see what they did, I would write it down on paper. And that's literally how I learned the triangle system, was doing that way. I got so excited about it. I brought it to Alaska in 1991. Sorry, 1992. 1992, I decided to start bringing the triangle to Alaska, and ironically, we had our worst season ever. And something that I learned from a leadership standpoint is don't teach what you don't know.
Could you please elaborate on that? On
Well, I mean, I was trying to learn it as I was trying to teach it, and I didn't really have the expertise to really teach it. And the players knew that, and they could see that. And I was like hesitant about this, not sure about that, but it was a lot of trial and error. And during that trial and error period, we did a lot of losing, and it really came to a point at the end of '92. I almost lost my job, and but I convinced him to, let me continue to try.
What made you try? What made you say, I think this is it? I mean, you were already losing. The evidence was there that you were losing games.
Well, prior to that, I had tried different systems. I had tried motion offense, which I felt, if you're a basketball person, I felt it was, I didn't have enough control over it because it was just movement. And there was too much freedom for the players, too much freedom. And it was hard to keep anybody accountable because there was really nothing wrong that they could do in their mind. So I just didn't feel like I had enough control. And then I tried to do, like set plays. The problem with set plays, it was too restrictive. It was on the other side of the spectrum. It was too restrictive. I didn't feel the players had enough freedom. And it was easy to defend and predict what we were going to do because they were set plays. And the triangle kind of cut that right in the middle. It was a chance to be both free and structured. And it was literally a system. And that's what I was looking for, a system. And
were you questioned about this, about using that?
Yes, my owner took me to lunch and basically fired me and then rehired me by the end of lunch. But he actually said at the time that I don't think maybe you should run the triangle anymore because it's just not working. And so it was kind of one of the conditions that I get rehired. And I said, okay. But then when I went back, we took a short break. And when I went back to practice, I just said, I'm going to do it again. So I did it. My owner wasn't a basketball expert. He was a swimmer, Fred Uitensu. Yes. And so he wasn't really sure exactly what we were running anyway. So we went back and ran it, and we went from our worst year in '93 and eventually went into our best ever year in '94. And then from that, we won even better in '95, and then we won what everybody talks about, the Grand Slam in '96. So we were absolutely dominant through that point.
What happened that it got to that point?
Well, again, we talked about the trial and error. You know, there was a lot of trial and error, and I was trying to figure it out. And we started to smooth it out. We started to gain more confidence in it. I started to gain more confidence in myself and my own knowledge. And I think it was just the bottom line was just the hard-headedness of just, you know, telling the players, this is what we're going to do. We're going to live and die with this. And eventually they bought in, and it started to work for us just a little bit, and then we just continued to build on it. And to a point where I always felt that when you're trying to run a complicated system like the triangle, there's going to be some worse before you get better. But the thing about the triangle, once you figure it out and once you run it, it really jumps over the other systems. And so when you can get it up to that level, it's really the best system, in my opinion, that you can run. And we've proven that. And we've proven that by winning 25 championships. Phil Jackson's the winningest coach in NBA history with his 11 championships. And he purely ran the triangle as well. So to me, the proof is in the pudding. Although I think if you talk to people now, coaches nowadays, they don't feel it fits the modern game. I totally disagree.
And you're still sticking with
I'm still sticking with it, but I went away from it for a couple of years just to experiment and try something different. And we won a couple of championships doing that, but I just felt like, there's a ceiling, right? And the thing that we tried to do that was different from the triangle, we kept getting hit it up on the ceiling. We just couldn't. Once we got up here, it was like, now what do we do? We just can't get it any better. And but with the triangle, it's like trees, and it's like branches in a tree. It expands and gets bigger and grows and gets to be a bigger tree. So there was never any of that feeling of hitting a ceiling. And with the triangle, I know I'm not explaining this well, but that's
all good.
That's what we wanted to do.
When do you decide, look, I want to try something new, and then when you're hitting that ceiling, what's your thought process that goes, hey, well, let's go back to that one? How do you go?
Well, see, that's not my thought process. My thought process was not, because if I had felt like the triangle wasn't working, then we never would have gotten to the level that we've gotten to. We always say with the triangle, there are breakthroughs, especially when you're trying out. There's certain times where you have to break through the wall and continue going. There's been a lot of coaches that have tried to use a triangle in the past, and they either tried to, number one, bastardize it, make it different, which you don't get a full commitment to the system, and therefore you don't get the full advantage of the system because you're not letting it take hold. And then there's the ones that as soon as something doesn't work, then they veer off and start doing something different. And then maybe they'll go back to it again, but as soon as it doesn't work, they'll go back and start doing something different. And if you get into that point, that's the problem with a lot of coaches. They only get to a certain point and don't get beyond because they stop here and it's not successful. What makes the triangle hard is that society now wants immediate satisfaction. They want to win right now. And if you're going to have a system like that needs to be developed, oftentimes the people above you, the management, the ownership, they won't be patient enough with you to let you go through the trial and error, go through the failure, improve, and do that. And I think that's one of the problems we have with our society right now is that we don't learn to fail and get better.
Why do you say society now? I mean, what is it that you're noticing that's
Well, I think it's the idea of immediate satisfaction. I think that people want results immediately. And oftentimes the results don't come immediately. You need development before those results will come. The greatest teacher is failure. So, but right now, and I use the program of Gilas, the national team, where we've had so many coaches through the years, and every time a new coach comes into the team, he has a different idea of how he wants to run it. So he gets different player personnel. He brings his own system or way he wants to coach. And then the moment they fail or they don't achieve what or reach expectations, then immediately they want to change it. They change them and then they bring in a new coach. And so what happens is the new coach comes in, and what did he do? He brings new players in, he brings the new system in, and again, if they're not successful, change them again. And this is something that's been an issue with the Gilas, the national team. There's been so little continuity. And I'm the coach of the national team right now, the Gilas team, and we're trying to develop a program through continuity. But it's difficult because the moment they fail, then there's just so much social media attention. People get on a bandwagon, say this is not working, and start making their own suggestions of how that should be done.
And so how did you, as a coach, you coach two teams, a national team, and then Ginebra. How did you, with all of that you're going on, how do you take it all in?
Well, it can be difficult sometimes reading because Ginebra has a high profile.
Yeah.
I went from Alaska that had their own level of profile. Then I went to Pure Foods, semi coffee, which had a higher profile, and then I went to Ginebra, which had the highest profile. And so that was big adjustments for me personally. And then you go to Gilas, which is way up there. It's a whole huge another step up there in terms of high profile.
Sure.
And
expectations.
Yeah, expectations and so I think number one, I try to pay attention to social media. I mean, I do. Yeah, okay. I believe it's important. I know a lot of guys feel like just ignore it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's healthy. I think that you need to know what's being said out there. You need to know, you need to be open to it. You're closing yourself off to it, I think is wrong. I think you need to be open to it because it's part of society now.
Okay.
And if you just close yourself and ignore it, then you're putting yourself into a box, and that's not healthy. So I take it with a grain of salt, obviously. I'll look at it a lot more when I win and less when I lose, but I still try to, because it can be difficult. A lot of the hard comments and things can be difficult to handle, especially for the people around me that care about me. My wife and my kids and friends. It's more difficult for them actually than it is for me because I'm looking at it objectively. I'm trying to look at it, not taking it personal, but looking at it objectively. And I think I can learn from that. So I don't ignore it, but I do, I think I have the kind of personality that I can dismiss it when someone says it because like I said, I can be hard-headed. And even if you're saying this to me, if I have a true belief in what I'm doing, it's not going to affect me as I move forward. I will listen to positive comments and think, maybe. Most likely I'll say no and still continue on. But there might be comments there that I might take and at least give some thought for it. So I think that's the healthier way to look at it.
You do seem to have a stubborn streak about you, right? I mean, going back to that story, the lunch of with Fred Utengsu, and then how important has that been for you to have that, what is it, single-mindedness?
Yeah, I think it's important to. I think it's well, first of all, it comes from belief. You have to have belief, and um, my wife calls me hard-headed, but on the other hand, I have a system that evolves and changes, and it's like amoeba. It changes shape, so I can make adjustments to that. I can do it differently. I can run it differently, but I just really believe in the foundational part of the system. And you asked me this 30 years ago, maybe 35 years ago, and maybe I'm not too confident. But after 35 years of having some success, and I walk into a room with players right now with that success in the back, and so there's more of an immediate buy-in than it was 35 years ago when I was trying to get Abikadabra and Yo-Yo Benjamin to buy into what we were saying, and they were totally in rebellion. As opposed to now, I walk into a room with Gilas, and I have all these superstars, and they'll give me the benefit of the doubt immediately because of the success that I've had previously. That's just
your confidence comes from that success.
Yeah, that's just a fact of life. It doesn't equate to everybody, but I've been able to get that backing. It's like Phil Jackson walks into a room, people are going to listen to him because of he is who he is.
What parts of your leadership style came naturally, and which ones did you have to develop the hard way?
Well, that's a good question. I'm a big believer that leadership can be taught. I'm a big believer in what John Maxwell says, and that leaders are born. He always goes, leaders are born. Yeah, well, of course they're born. They
are born.
Yeah, everybody's born. So, but no, he has a true belief that leadership can be developed, and you can become a leader. You can become a better leader. When I have young coaches come up to me and they ask me, what do I need to do to become a better coach? And I tell them, the X and O's, they don't even really matter. Anybody can do the X and O's of basketball. Anybody can figure out, put a guy in, substitute a person in, substitute a person out, or run a practice and throw the ball out there, let guys go up and down the floor. Anybody can do that. Obviously, there's an expertise that's important, but what really is important, I always tell young players, is to improve your leadership. Read a John Maxwell, go find Stephen Covey, listen to even someone like a Will Smith or someone of that sort, or someone who's more contemporary, but improve your leadership skills. That will improve you as a coach. And I think that's what's most likely lacking in young coaches, is that they're so caught up in the X and O's of basketball that they forget the leadership part, which is all about relationships. It's all about motivating. It's all about developing culture. All those things that come in to really separating teams from being an average team to a good team to a great team. So those are the things I think you can develop as a coach. And those are the things that I have developed, I feel, over time, especially understanding the idea of culture.
Could you please talk about that? Culture. What is culture for you?
Defining culture is really how players feel when they walk into the gym. How do they feel when they walk into the gym? That is the culture that you're trying to bring. And it really comes from the leader himself. It comes from the values that the leader has. We talk about 4 core values. We talk about that a lot. And the 4 core values that I would bring to a team would be different from the 4 core values that you would bring to a team, or anybody that would bring to a team. It's different. As an example, and I see if I can get these right. I might be, I have to remember them. I have them written down, but I have to remember them. Steve Kerr of the Golden State Warriors. His 4 core values are joy, competition, mindfulness.
One word.
Can't remember. Joy, competition, mindfulness, and
We'll go for it, Steve Kerr.
can't remember
Sure.
the 4th one.
And
As opposed to Eric Spoelstra, who is, Steve Kerr is a big believer in understanding that basketball is a game, so you got to treat it like a game, and you want people to enjoy the. So when they talk about joy, they talk about being immersed in the game. When they talk about mindfulness, they're talking about being the awareness of the game, being aware at all times. Competition is you going at each other. Dang, I can't remember the last one. But on the other hand, Eric Spoelstra is hard driven. He is really a hard driven coach. I was with the Miami Heat in the summer league, and I coached with them for a while. Then Eric Spoelstra is a really good friend of mine, and their whole culture is based on discipline, commitment to excellence, hard, everything is hard.
It shows.
Yeah, and they play a completely different style than the Warriors do.
Correct.
But it's the culture that they bring. And for the Miami Heat, everything is culture. They are so immersed in their culture. They walk around with shirts that says culture all the time, or hats that say culture. And they speak it, and they talk about it, and they live it on that team. I mean, I've seen it. They live it.
And what is it for you?
For Nebra, ours is attention to detail, accountability. I should be able to say this easily because it's coming from me, but it's varied through the years, and I mean we've changed it through the years.
So you have changed. You have found yourself changing the 4.
Yeah. The 4 were different from Alaska. When we did Alaska, we had 4 core. Now the way I did it is that I tried to get the team to be a part of it. So we went through the 4 core values with the team. And it's like, okay, what do you think is valuable to you as a team? What's valuable?
So it changes through the players.
Not necessarily. It really should come from me more because I'm the one that's got to bring it to the group. But then the players have to buy into it, and they've got to live that culture as well. It doesn't mean anything if I can't make those values come alive. If they're just mine and I don't make them come alive in the minds of our players, then we have no culture. But like I said, it's what the players feel when they walk into the thing. Again, defensive oriented, attention to detail, competition. But we actually we don't call it competition. We call it challenge. We want to challenge and not compete. So in practice, we want to challenge each other. Meaning, if you're my teammate and we're in a drill together, if I challenge you to your max, what's going to happen to you? You're going to improve. If you challenge me to my max, then I'm going to improve. So you continually challenge each other to the max, then you're improving overall as a team. I don't like the word competition in practice because I don't want winners and losers in our practice. I want us to be able to challenge each other rather than compete. I don't want losers in our practice. Now, we take that competition and compete in games, but I'm more locked into practice. So our values are really about practice. And then the last one is accountability. because if we have attention to detail, we can be accountable. So it's defensive minded, attention to detail, and that's really our biggest one is attention to detail, challenge, and then accountability.
Could you talk about attention to detail? How does that work?
Well, we have a very intricate system, the triangle system. And it's only going to be successful if you are attentive to the details of the system. And there's a lot of details to it in terms of footwork, in terms of movement. It's a read and react. So you're constantly reading and reacting to what's going on with the defense or what your teammate is doing. So there's a real, number one, awareness of what's going on. And then through the awareness, you have to be very attentive to detail. So if we're not attentive to detail, we cannot, succeed basically as a team. So we really push on the details, and what that does, and when we run that kind of triangle system where everything is so detailed oriented, when we start talking about the defensive side, there's already that mindset of being detailed oriented, and we bring it to the defensive side. So we end up being a very detailed oriented team. I think ex-players, when they talk about me, generally what they say is that they're always so surprised at how detailed we are in our practices and the way we do things, in terms of our repetitions, in terms of I'm a big believer in two things. One, don't practice the wrong things in practice. I mean, you cannot practice the wrong things. So if something's not being right, then you got to do it over again, and you got to do it right. And from a coaching standpoint, you either coach it or you allow it. So, meaning, if I allow him just to come late in practice, then he will continue to be late in practice. I'm allowing it. That's not on him, that's on me as a coach. That's my ownership. I have to own that. If someone is not doing something, not working hard on defense, or not executing the triangle right, I'm allowing that. I either got to coach it and make sure he does it the right way, coach it to make sure he's there on time, or I allow it. That's my choice as a coach. Either coach it or allow it. And so that again comes into our attention to detail. I either got to coach it or allow it. And so we coach it and not allow guys not to be attentive to detail. So that's a really big part of my coaching philosophy. And hopefully that's a big part of our culture. And players come in to their gym, they know that they got to be attentive to detail, or they're going to be made accountable. That's part of our culture.
Speaking of culture and the players, you've managed stars and role players. How do you align different egos, roles, and ambitions into one mission?
Well, there's a lot of things that's not a simple question. There's a lot that goes involved in that. And you can really only talk about it on the surface level. But by and large, the first thing I do from a coaching standpoint is I develop a hierarchy. Understanding that not everybody is equal. You try to treat everybody equally. In other words, you try to give them the same amount of attention, and you're not gonna, you don't want your superstar not paying attention to detail and your non-superstar to do it. I mean, there's got to be an equality there. But there's also an understanding that not everybody's created equal.
Superstar.
That guy is a better player than that player. And so we kind of hierarchy it from 1 to 12. There's established hierarchy that players, again, part of the culture, come in and understand that, 1, 2, 3, and 4, they're going to get more playing time than 8, 9, 10, and 12, or 11 and 12. And you have, this is my way. Now, if you talk to Yang Yao of Rain or Shine, he will tell you just the opposite, that, all 12 guys, I will treat them exactly the same. They're all going to get equal playing time. And that's what makes his system so unique. And I always scratch my head on his system. I don't know how he makes it work, but he does. And it would be interesting to hear him talk about it. But for me, I establish a hierarchy, and it's really about developing buy-in. And I think if you walk into a situation where you are an efficient leader, and if you show care, then you will get buy-in from all 12 players, or you get buy-in from even your superstars. Now, that's not always the case. There are guys that are uncoachable. I've had uncoachable guys in the past. And
how do you work out with having an uncoachable player?
Well, you have to answer some questions about them. Number one, how much value do they bring to the team? How much influence do they have in the team? Because if they're going to be a bad guy and they're influencing the rest of the players, then you're going to disrupt, the apple cart. And so you have to decide, now can he change? You have to ask the question, can he change? You might get a superstar that in the beginning might cause problems or whatever, but if you feel like you can work with him and you can change him over time, then maybe that's useful.
And how do you try to answer those questions you ask?
Well, I think it's just a matter of developing a relationship with them, or comes through observation, comes from how he interacts with his teammates or his workmates. It depends on how he reacts to me in terms of will he follow instructions, will he not follow instructions? And again, I think one of the biggest things is, will he influence, if he's not following instructions, will he influence other players to not follow instructions? And now once you get to that level, and those answers cannot be answered in a yes or a no,
what do you do?
Then you have to let go. Even though it will hurt you in the short term because you're letting one of your best players leave you. To me, culture and team desire and team work ethic, those are overriding factors for having one superstar but he's going to deviate from what we're trying to do, then we're not going to reach the level that we want to reach to. So maybe you let go of that superstar and maybe you develop that guy and get him to be a superstar. Or you go and get another guy and bring him in. But you can't kowtow and allow your whole system to be broken from one person. Sometimes as a leader, you have to bite the bullet. And those are tough decisions because that may affect your position after a while, because you lose that guy. Now you're not going to be as good right away. And now management's going to be on you saying, why aren't we as good as we are? And you're saying, well, just be patient. I can get us good again. And they're going to look around and say, well, I think that guy can get us good. So then you're out of a job. So you have to be careful with it. But I think from an integrity standpoint, I think that's what happens to a lot of teams, is that they do allow that one person who finds himself as special or thinks he's above beyond everything, and he spoils everything that you're trying to do, and you'll never reach the level that you want to get to. So those are tough decisions.
There's something in business, they say that it's in an organization, rather have a hole than an asshole.
Yeah, that is true.
So like you,
exactly right.
I'm fine with having a hole here.
You try to fill it the way you can. And I think that if you fill it properly, you can become a better team. And that's happened to me not very often, maybe 3 or 4 players throughout my career that eventually I've had to let go because I couldn't work with them, or they were affecting the team in a bad way, or they were setting a bad example. I mean, ideally, you want your best players to be your best leaders. But if he's not going to lead the way that you want him to, then you're going to find yourself in trouble. Eventually, you will be worse in the long run.